Hello, everyone, and welcome to the April 2020 Integration Down Under. We have had a little bit of a gap in March, and we've had a lot of things happening in between then. And with most of us now working from home and spending a good part of our day online, we're going to have a good session tonight. We have Howard from the US, and I've known Howard for a very long time through the MVP program. But let's go through the slides real quick. So basically, we've got our organizers for Integration Down Under, Martin and Dan. They both can't be with us tonight, but we've got Renee from Sydney, Wagner from Auckland, and myself from here in Melbourne. And tonight we have Howard Edidin, and he's going to be talking.
Edidin.
Edidin. Ah, okay, sorry.
Everybody does it. I'm used to
it. So basically using BizTalk on-premise IoT Hub, extending some of the BizTalk, and he's got a few changes to this tonight to explain some more of the HL7 FHIR stuff. Without any further ado.
Extending BizTalk, that's actually what I've been finding more and more uses for, especially in healthcare. One of the main drivers behind that is I've discovered and talked to a lot of payers and providers. They're skeptical about putting their data on the cloud. So they want to keep their data on site, and especially if they're using BizTalk for HIPAA in the US or HL7 in the US and the rest of the world, essentially, why not also do it FHIR with itself too? And after a little bit of experimentation, I found it was fairly easy to implement this. What I have here basically is just to give you an idea. This is a HIPAA diagram. Basically, I've taken the FHIR server, the open source FHIR server, and deployed it locally, basically as a Docker, on Docker, on a local server or machine or VM. And actually, it's a very simple implementation. Now that FHIR server is what they call bare bones. It has somewhat functionality to it. It supports the REST API, but it doesn't support a lot of the functionality that you really need in a total FHIR server, and that I'll go into it in a minute. Essentially, let me pull in a little further. Essentially, you're receiving X12, or in the case HIPAA, and it's transformed to FHIR. Basically, the X12, of course, is already in the flat file, and also converted to XML. The HL7 is actually converted to XML also using Accelerator, but I bypassed the Accelerator on some of that too. FHIR comes in as JSON or as XML, and in the BizTalk world, it's all XML. In the rest of the APIs or any services calling it, it's usually JSON. And as we go a little further here, we can see it basically the HIPAA coming in using a SQL cluster, SSO, and some automation to it, and on-premise. And the key part of this, what really makes it fantastic using BizTalk, is you can do all the operations you have to write code for, add on to the FHIR server in BizTalk with orchestrations. It simplifies it. So I'm able to do step-by-step the validation, and otherwise you have to write a lot of code. And if you write code, you have to update that code, and basically issues arrive. It's a long-term and more costly way of implementing. The idea essentially is, with BizTalk, as you know, it's a no-code solution in most cases, and it's a fast solution. You're able to get up and get it out and basically in the hands of the customer. Okay, a little breakdown here coming in is, again, a little more of the look and feel of it, the basic operations, and the FHIR server. FHIR server is essentially consists of the bare bones. The FHIR server is actually an API with a SQL backend database. And the FHIR API it has its own REST operations, and it's one API that you cannot modify, you cannot manage, you cannot do anything to it. You just have to use it as it is. You can't extend it. If you do basically any changes, you'll break it. And essentially you'll lose high trust certification and such like that. And essentially what happens now is this is an eligibility request. And essentially you don't get a response back immediately. On HIPAA 270, you're going to get a 999 back. And basically that's it. But someone has to create the eligibility response, and that usually is a person in a payer or an organization, and they'll generate it from a client app and push it back to the FHIR server. Well, there's an issue with pushing it back to the FHIR server, and this is where, because the client is no longer connected, a FHIR server doesn't know where to send it. So essentially in the realm of FHIR, some of the extensibility and the requirements are due is to create subscriptions. And to create subscriptions is basically all code-based. There's nothing plugged in or anything. You have to write the code to do that. And again, with subscriptions, basically, we're able to take an identifier out, store it in BizTalk in orchestration, and basically just send it back through and run it back through that way back to the client. So it's very easy in that respect. Okay, this is a flat file coming in. Essentially, this would be well, version 2x and such like that. Now, one thing that payers, I blew some minds there basically, is that I told them, number one, you cannot use any repository except one that belongs to the FHIR server. Number two, everything must be encrypted in flight and at rest. Number three, if you receive a, let's say, anything that contains patient data to recognize that patient, you need to sanitize that document or that information before sending it to a downstream app. So essentially what I've done here basically is sanitize it. So sanitizing essentially is what you're normally going to get provided to payers are basic observations, OBXs. And you have to remove everything except for the unique identifier for the patient for either that payer or provider. And of course, the observation data is allowed. That way, you're providing total protection, essentially. I've been working on a sidetrack on something on patient recognition, but essentially, the only way that a patient can sign off on is their electronic signature has to be embedded in that resource and that message in order for anybody to see it. They can say, no, I don't want anybody to see it, and that's it. They have to, even basically insurance or provider cannot violate that rule. Okay, again, my blow up there. And a little animation. Now, extending BizTalk and using BizTalk as an on-premise IoT hub. And I made some changes with this because I discovered a few things. One, that I can I created an MQTT, basically, I'm going to do it as an extension to it, but I'm able to send an MQTT message and receive one back. That being said, I can communicate directly with an IoT, basically a hub on Azure, or specifically with any device or such that doesn't support HTTP. And I essentially do it that way. So I can eliminate the need for an edge device. So BizTalk becomes also an edge device. And I thought about doing it either as an adapter, but I think as an extension would be better because this will happen at the port. And I've already tested it. It works out quite well in that respect. Okay, this is what essentially is what essentially the way this works with within the realm of BizTalk. Here, what we have is a let me see. Did I get? There we go. One. Okay. Well, one, your devices are sending in. Well, again, BizTalk is like an edge device, but it's more than an edge device. It's also a fringe device. So it provides a lot more functionality, especially in saving state. So essentially, your data is going to be transmitted, and you're able to receive the twin data and process the twin data. And it comes in the BizTalk, and essentially, I did have the Edge device over on the, well, there's in the FHIR first, but there's into the Edge device, which I'm actually, it's not unnecessary to use that now. We can do it straight from BizTalk and then push it up that way. Coming back down, basically, the data it comes in, it's run through an orchestration and processed. And actually, I've got some code and such to show you on that. And back to calling APIs. Okay, there. Okay, so I'm going to skip this. Is from another presentation, but it's migrating HIPAA data. But it actually affects everything. In order to send a FHIR resource, and by the way, they're not schemas or resources, and we use them as generate schemas from the resources. So in BizTalk, we call them schemas or resources or messages, whatever the case may be. But in the FHIR world, they're resources. And resources, in order to create, basically, when you're sending a resource in, it could have multiple identifiers. So let's say eligibility request. It can have a patient ID. It would have the insurer ID of that. They're going to have provider ID. Now, provider and payer are considered organizations, so organization IDs. If you send a request in and the resources for those IDs don't exist, you get an error back. So the cost is heavy in this, and it's time consuming. You've got to migrate your existing data into the FHIR server, convert it to FHIR Resources in order to be able to process this. Now, again, this is basically what migration is, but to give you an idea, the FHIR server receives an eligibility request. It will reject it. Any of the resources don't have reference values. Now, an insurance resources are created first, then practitioner, then insurer, then organizations for each one, then subscriber, then the patient, then location, patient resources, enrollment, and coverage resources. And this is only a small part of it. Just to do an eligibility request and get an eligibility response, you've got to create about 15 or 16 different resources populated in the database. Otherwise, you won't get a response back. Okay, well, and BizTalk's been doing this for over 20 years, so it essentially that. And let me just get out of this. Okay, how easy was that? That was fine. Okay, let me go to this. Okay, let me go to a different screen. Okay, let's see, I'm on this one here. I'm presenting a screen. Okay, I've got to switch to the other side.
Okay.
Okay. Am I going too fast for everybody?
No, you're doing good.
Okay, so I'm going to go to this one here, screen 3. I'm going to share. Okay. Everybody see?
Yes.
Okay, you see an orchestration, right?
Yes.
Okay. One thing I don't like about the new plugin, I'm getting this. I've uninstalled and installed these extensions 3 or 4 times. I still get these.
Mm.
Okay, but let me give you an idea first of all. In order to use FHIR XML, you have to basically modify the FHIR base, which is all the base attributes and such like that. Otherwise, it's a circular reference. But let me give you some idea of basically what we have here. We're going to have an observation. Okay. This is the primary resource that you will get in for a device. Actually, you take the, let me go back. Let me do this one first. Okay. This is a schema created from basically from a device, and essentially you can see all the IDs and everything here. The tags are the important thing, because the tags are what's going to hold specifically the data that you need. So I'm not too concerned about the capabilities or properties or such like that, because I need to be collecting, these could be coming through 5,000 every second. So I need to be collecting this data in an order. So essentially, we have the data coming in, and just created this right from, which is nice, the JSON wizard on that. So we take this, and we also need, well, there's several device in there. I need the device metrics. So this is basically what the device is programmed as in here. So actually what it does, information on this. So in order to take this and map it to an observation, I need basically pulling it from 2 different against the server. So let me just go right back up here to my ODX here, and orchestration view. It won't let me create an XML doc for some reason. And I want to use an XML doc because I'm sending it into there. But what I'm doing here essentially is device ID I'm pulling out in a variable, and then I'm creating a message assignment. So I want to get basically device as a string value. Then which should be an XML doc, but I can't get get it to create an XML doc. And then I'm sending that to a request, and that's going into basically this import. And these operations here. And these are the REST operations. I'm passing in on that ID, so I'm passing that in using my value mapping. I've got to actually fix the property namespaces on that. And the content type is, in this particular case, it's application FHIR plus XML. So in order to send it, basically, you can send it as plain XML or JSON, but the proper content type for it, so it'll validate, is FHIR plus XML or FHIR plus JSON. So essentially, I'm sending it through there and sending it to a FHIR server here. And that would essentially, I'm doing a request here and getting a response back. The response back is I'm receiving a device metric. So I'm basically querying using device ID and getting the metric. There's only one device metric per device, so I don't have to worry about, and it has to exist because you can't create the device without the metric. There is actually about 3 or 4 different resources used for devices. These are basically our information or types, and there's operation or device, let's say a request basically for deployment. So in actuality, you're able to, within the realm of BizTalk, you're able to communicate with leaf devices, child devices, any type, actually any device, whether it's specifically on-premise or specifically in the cloud. And coming back here, have the transformation where I'm the transform that have the device coming in with the device metric. And let's see. This was, I had to do this one over because but I have data in here. So give you a little idea of mapping. It might look confusing because of what you see is IDs and values. First of all, there's only one required field, and that's the ID in here. So essentially, to understand this, you need this view. Let me pull up, let's see. Okay, let me pull this up. Okay, what we have here is resources. So what we have here, we have device is an administrative resource. So we also have specifically an observationist diagnostics. So let's look at device here. And specifically it's referenced by these resources. And this is what composes a device. What you have, what you see a backbone element here is essentially just an element. But when you see a reference to it, it means that there's another resource embedded in there. So you have a location resource. So you have to create the location resource. And that's required basically if you have a location. So in other words, basically you have essentially, here's the device definition. That's one resource. It defines what the device is. And then we have specifically, you reference your patient, your organization, location, and the parent. You could have parent-child devices. So this device could have a parent device and references there. So it might look a little bit confusing, so let's just look at a example. That's basically the simplest form of a device. Because again, the only thing required, you must include human readable. It must be both human readable and machine readable. Okay, now to give you an ID, this is a device here basically, and what this again is the text up there. So we have the text here, human readable, and what we have is a system, and the system is and the value that tells us where the source is, who sent that in. So we're able to basically figure out which system and what value, so that we're going to actually create as a promoted property, so we can respond back based upon that information. One way of doing it is by party management, but it might be too much in that respect, because party management is really not, well, if you're returning, let's say, if you're going to be returning actually version 2x, most of specifically your implementation, until this is ANSI certified, and some of it is already, is going to be internal. So it's an internal, all your internal processing of HL7 or basically any HL7 document type or standard, whether it's 3.0 or version 2x or FHIR, would be internal processing. So you're going to be converting, customers will convert their internal systems to use FHIR. And when interoperability comes into effect, which is basically started in the US with CMS, which is the government, basically the Medicare, that are requiring all healthcare payers to achieve interoperability. That means they must be able to communicate with any FHIR server in the world. So they must be able to expose the FHIR API and receive and send FHIR messages from anywhere in the world. But they also must include what they call blue button. And blue button means that the patient or the subscriber must have the capabilities of accessing their own data. And rather than do a request, it's a website. It's actually blue button. Actually, most of the code already is up on GitHub. If anybody cares to look at that, it's essentially you log on and then you request your data. Of course, basically electronic signatures and OAuth and everything involved there. So let's go back to here. Let's see. And what we have device definition, device metric. So device definition is a kind. It's used to describe the characteristics and capabilities. So combining basically this. So you essentially The device metric, device, you're creating these resources almost concurrently, but there is a particular order to it. Okay, now you can be referenced by a device, or you could have medicinal products or medicinal packaging. Okay, we have device definitions, so let me go back here. Okay, let's go to mappings. There's no mappings for that, so we're going to go back to device definition. And device definition is, okay, this is search parameters, so you can search basically on almost anything. Your first, basically, if you want to learn FHIR, is go through the documentation here. You really need to understand basically what is represented here. Because if you don't, it's going to be difficult mapping. You really need to understand specifically what maps to what. So again, you have a manufacturer reference, which is an organization. Then you have specifically device definitions. Now we also have, let me go back here, resources, and I'm going to look at categorize. So we have, let me find what I'm looking for. Okay. We have task, organization. So we have clinical, device request. Okay. This is fairly new, basically. And this is it represents request for a patient to employ a medical device. So this is a request, essentially, that request comes in, and that's essentially, this happens before you create the device. Or actually apply, the device might be there, but it might not be used, or it might need to be reassigned, and you use a device request to do that. So you generate this, and specifically the status types, identifiers, and there's a little bit of data here. So you need to have conditions, or if you want an observation, diagnostic reports, who's going to perform that, and such like that there. So that's one. And coming back down here, terminology. We come back here and search parameters. FHIR is pretty easy to search because you can search on almost any parameter on there. And the syntax is fairly easy to work with. Let's take a look at an example here. And let's say we'll use JSON, and there's human readable, which is status text generated. It's a little bit difficult to do that without actually FHIR coming in, but it can be generated. The identifier is the identifier value. That's the value for this particular resource. Then the canonical, basically, definition, and what we base it on, if it's a prior request, and then a group identifier, status, active, codes are extremely important. And specifically, all this information, again, not all of it. Let's say if you have the information, then you enter the information, you create this. And this is created essentially from a, let's say, a client workstation, essentially where it'll be a form or such pulled up, and the actual message is generated from there. So there's specifically ways to handle that. Let's see, it's operations. There we go, operations. There we go. These are all RESTful operations. And services defined terminology. So we have defined, these are defined, so you're able to, and you see the syntax is fairly simple here. To create a resource is all you do is basically create the resource. Again, it could just have one identifier in there. And essentially, and I'll show you on there also, coming up, I'm back on that. So let's go back home here, and first time here. No, I'm not here, first time. Okay, so we have the REST API and search documents. So we have, let's see, library, measurement, measure reports, clinical reasoning basically knowledge and information. Oh yes, one thing we need to know is basically the data types, is specifically the foundation. So basically a resource, what a resource is. And this is a foundation framework, a content management and data management. So a bundle is essentially, it's a envelope in a way, but it defines what's in that envelope. So it can be a list, a group, or composition of different resources. It could also be a transaction. And by doing it as a transaction, within a bundle, you can have different REST operations. You can do a post to post a new resource. Then right underneath that, you're going to do a put, where you're just going to do an update. And only want to update one particular field at a time, so you might have another put. Then essentially you might have another post. And it basically, the API knows, as long as you tag it as a bundle that, of the type, which is going to be a transaction identifier. So it's going to be a type. You can see a transaction response, different types there. So the API knows if it's a transaction, it's going to process the resources in the bundle from top down. So in essence, the advantage of doing it that way, first of all, you don't modify an existing resource. You create another, you basically clone it and or create another resource, and basically your identifier gets incremented. So it's an ID, it's number one, number two, number three in that respect. And that allows you to pull back a history. Let's say you have observations and you want to pull back 6 months or a series of the operations, and you're able to, as a primary physician, you want to view that information. You can query and pull that back. You can also, what they call, do a vget, which is you're simply going to pull back one version, one increments in that collection. I'll call it a collection, essentially what it is. So a bundle is a collection. So, and again, we have the type, document, and the bundle type is required in this respect. So let's say if we, let's see, we have an example. We got a whole bunch of bundles. So we got a response for retrieval conditions. So let's look at this one. And this is a batch response. But when you get back, you get essentially a type of response. It could be a query response and shows the parameters on top and the values below. So the entry is a resource. This is a patient, the IDs and identifiers. So this is basically what you would get back. weaves and back and forth there. Quite a bit. But not quite as much as doing this with XML. In essence, or basically looking at HIPAA is a monster. That's why payers want to get rid of it, the government wants to get rid of it, and essentially doing it that way. So that's a bundle example. So let me go on here as profiles. Profiles are the parts, so these are different profiles, and essentially common related, so your definitions and such. Now, FHIR supports 80% of what is required. And for the other 20%, you cannot modify basically anything in the resource, but you can create an extension. And an extension is essentially what you see here is essentially it's let's do this. Let's just pull this one. So what it is basically a URI and a value and or a type. And these extensions get registered or they publish to a registry. So we're using a URI, and that's how specifically a payer or provider receives a message with extension, and they don't know what it is, of course, because it's not defined in the resource. They're able to query the registry and know specifically what that data represents. So that takes care of that other 20%. So we got, let's see, we got mappings. No, there's no mappings. Let me just go, let's see, I'm gonna go to resources here. Let's see, we can go to device again. Let's see, actually there's more here, a device use statement. Okay, device use statement is a record being used by a patient when the record is the result of a report from the patient or another clinician. So it's basically a device use statement. It's more or less, well, bookkeeping, let's put it that way. It's used in workflows and such like that. So it defines the use of that or how it's being used. And be searched on here. Okay, so let's say, well, we also have detailed descriptions, which are very informative. So it tells you specifically what each of these represent. And this documentation can be downloaded. You can come here and basically come get your downloads and download all this information here. This is links to servers represented, and then there's different languages where basically developer implementation there. I think I have another hour to go. How long do I have?
About another 10 minutes for the hour.
Okay. Is this an hour show or is this a 2 hour?
Hour, 1 hour.
Okay. Actually, as soon as I get that, I wanted to get to, but I can't get that issue fixed with this because I like to get this working on the orchestration. But and also actually what I've done, let me just pull this, is I actually have, let me close this solution. I'll save it and open up another solution. Okay, let's go to, I got another, open a project solution. And okay, let me see. Okay, this is something that for MQTT. Come on, Solution Explorer. There we go. So this is essentially how I can publish a UTT. So essentially, I found some of this on GitHub and generated. So it's an MQTT service. So I'm able to use a URL, a topic, and specifically, well, a payload. So I'm actually able to pass in. Okay, well, it doesn't like my squigglies there. Okay, so I'm able to create a service and actually do a publish a sync. So this is able to publish the message using MQTT. Now I'm going to work on this so I can actually, besides publishing, able to receive the message. So again, for devices, or specifically, as I was saying before, that I can use a Edge device, but I'm hoping this could take the place of the Edge device and able to essentially do this, and also AMQ, been working on that too. If I should, recommendations, if I should create this as an extension or, well, it really should be in an orchestration because it's actually doing it, it's actually an operation. So as an extension for a port, I think would probably be the best way to do it. So these internal classes down here. So I found out the code there, and this one actually has, it shows me well, I've got no squigglies on this one. So this was a thought on that. And
probably you can write this as an adapter in BizTalk, wouldn't you?
I could do that, but I looked at this. Do I really need an adapter, or would it be better as an extension on a port?
Yeah, I've done some interesting things like this with like the claim check pattern. And I made it up. It was a pipeline component using service bus, but the outbound transport's going to be MQTT, isn't it? And in the inbound transport's going to be MQTT.
Yeah, both would be. Yeah.
Yeah. So you almost need that. Almost sounds to me more like an adapter.
Okay, that's a good idea. I need the feedback because one person alone, it just doesn't. I have too much of my way of doing things, and
yeah, because
someone else's input.
Yeah,
it feels like an adapter for me as well, because then you could actually set up the port and use the whole pipeline before that to do stuff. Then just deal with this at the transport level, because this is pretty much the transport layer of that pipeline, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, receiver send, so yeah.
Yeah. So, because I did the POP3 one in 2004, so that we had a POP3 adapter.
Yeah, remember that, yeah. Okay, well, yeah. What do you think? You think this could replace an Edge device?
The MQTT sounds fairly interesting because it would definitely make it easier to use.
Yeah, because it's just one less basically service to worry about. If it's built in, yeah. I'm going to open source everything, so it's not a problem there. In fact,
I was just wondering, does in software have an MQTT? adapter for BizTalk?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it probably. I mean, essentially, an edge device is you're sending or receiving from the IoT Hub the basic MQTT messages.
Yeah.
So, or specifically devices that don't support HTTP.
Yep. Actually, in software, it doesn't have an MQTT transport.
No, I couldn't find one anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they have something, it's just something else that's external.
Yeah, if searching here, I couldn't find that much as well.
Okay.
You know who to ping is, I would ping Clements Fasters.
Yeah, I know Clements. Yeah, he's big on protocols.
Because I know that they changed the service bus to use AMQP.
Right. Yeah. Now I could probably do AMQP on this, but there's really in devices there's very, very few. I mean, it's either MQTT or it's HTTP.
Yeah.
And again, using BizTalk for devices, it will work. I wish that this issue with the messages. I mean, I've installed and uninstalled the BizTalk extensions several times. I still get the same issue. I just put up another VM.
Is this 2020?
Yes.
Yeah. I've just been busy on other migrations, so I haven't actually got to 2020 yet.
Well, yeah, I've done. Well, I did. Actually, this one. This is BizTalk standard. That's kind of weird because the VM only comes on Windows 2019 with BizTalk standard, no SQL, no Visual Studio. It just comes with BizTalk standard.
Yeah, it's called taking the easy way out.
Yeah, it's giving you something and having you work for it. So I just find it's easier just to, I use a dev test and just create basically one I can push up anytime.
Yeah. The problem they had was how to license the SQL, or not the SQL, but how to license the Visual Studio. And also they had an issue with how they do the dev. If they do SQL, they want these machines to not have SQL on them, but they haven't supplied a developer machine because it was too hard when they tried to do it before.
Well, you can actually the easiest way is basically just get a VM with SQL.
Yeah. So we need to get somebody working on either the desired state configuration or something like Chocolate or something like that. And that you can just spin up a SQL VM. It adds everything else that you need to make a developer machine.
Oh, I've got a scripted on.
Yeah, so that's basically what it's doing. The desired state config can do that, and Chocolate is the one thing I've seen a lot of developers starting to use.
I've used that for a long time.
Yeah, because I think Michael Stevenson out of the UK had some stuff done where he had developer machines done that way.
Right.
So,
is anybody else using 2020?
You
do anything, Wagner?
We starting a migration for a client as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's going to be a double hop migration because they are on 2013. We try to do.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's 2016 will go easily.
Yeah, we try to do the in-place upgrade. It doesn't work directly, and in the end, we're going to be doing the normal way, side-by-side integration, migration. Install a new set of machines, migrate the applications.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, is there anything else you want to cover in this?
Well, I'd like to circle back and once I get this resolved, let's do another session.
Yep, that's fine. We can schedule one. We can also, if you want to add anything, what you can do is we can put another video up with this around this session too. If you want to just record part of that demo once you get it working,
yeah,
we can add that to our YouTube channel. I'll send you the link and everything to that YouTube channel and everything.
Okay.
I don't think we didn't have any questions or anything there. Can you just let me have the screen back, and I'll just put a couple of final slides up.
Where have I got? Okay, here, stop share. There we go.
Okay, and then let me just share my screen. So again, we don't have any questions at the moment, but what we'll do is we'll put this up on our YouTube channel, and and you can get to that YouTube channel through the www.integrationdownunder.com.
Okay.
It's finally got HTTPS after I enabled front door to give it HTTPS.
Okay, that's good.
That is on my list to do with my stuff. Thanks for the tip, Phil.
I can help you with it. I've been doing. I've done it 2 or 3 times, and the thing is that it's nice because you get a free certificate.
Oh,
exactly. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay, one video I have is how to configure and deploy the FHIR server.
Yep.
Open source. I created a video on that.
Yeah, if you've got that on, you got that on a YouTube channel or anything?
No, I don't have it on anything yet.
No, okay. What I would say is create yourself a YouTube channel, and then what we can do is we can link to it from the description of this one.
Okay.
And that way,
I got to figure why the sound isn't working on it, but if it isn't, I'll just do a voiceover on it.
Yep. Yeah, because they help you when you get back into the MVP program.
Well, hopefully sometime.
Well, that'll give you some views and things like that on there. So,
well, I've got plenty of that from what the 3 newspapers I published.
Yep.
And everything. So
thank you very much for presenting for us tonight.
I appreciate it.
And I realize it's fairly early in the morning your time.
Right.
So,
exactly. That's what I'm going to say. Thanks for waking up so early, mate. It's like when I was looking at the time, it was like 4:40 in the morning.
I didn't go to bed.
So extra bonus.
Problem. Yeah.
So that means that little thing that I saw, like the size of the smoothie, was actually coffee, right?
Yeah.
No, this is iced coffee.
Oh, okay. That's American size cup.
Yeah,
that's true.
Well, for iced coffee, it's who drinks it in a cup.
Yep. So, okay, thank you very much, and I think we can end the recording here, and then basically we will. I'll have it up on the site shortly, and I'll send you a link to it when I get it up on the YouTube site.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.